Hey everyone, welcome to my channel, Books, Gurrs, and Purrs. My name's Leslie, and today we're going to be discussing Sabrina and Corina by Kali Fajardo-Anstine. This short story collection has 11 different stories, largely focused on female protagonists. There's an exploration of female dynamics, so whether it's sisters or grandparent to grandchild or parent to child, those are the dynamics in which the author plays with. And I want to say all the protagonists in this story are focused on Latina women of indigenous descent. All the stories mostly take place in Sahuarita, Colorado, and I say there's like one or two stories that go from one area to California or vice versa. I'm trying to think. You know what? I'm going to discuss maybe 3 or 4 essays once I'm done with my non-spoiler talk. And yeah, and then I'll go from there. This collection also explores violence against women, missing murdered indigenous women, financial struggles, gentrification, identity, pressures imposed by society on women, and how dangerous it is when you don't fall within line to what society expects of you to do. There's also a conversation going on about what is home, and I enjoyed every single short story. I like that the author is so detailed and the work is so distinctive. Like you clearly know what the author is talking about thematically, but in no way do the stories seem redundant. And I think that was just beautifully crafted by the author. I'll share, let's say, one quote, and before I get done with my non-spoiler portion, I just say that the author does a really great job of using imagery throughout her collection, as well as in one particular story, I really like the author's use of personification, and that's with the first short story called Sugar Babies, but I'll go into that during the spoiler chat. And so it's actually Sugar Babies, the first paragraph, the last sentence, that I thought was just absolutely beautiful. And so it says, Sahuarita, a place where the land, with its silken fibers of swaying grass, resembled a sleeping woman with her face pressed firmly to the pillow, a golden blonde by day, a raven-haired beauty by night. And I just thought that was so beautiful that the author used how do I say, like attributes of a female to describe the land and just how beautiful it is. But I also think that she's saying a lot about the book overall, in terms of like how women are treated and how they should be treated, and I really like that. Another thing is, beyond that, I shot this video yesterday, and I ended up having to scrap it. I had so many issues with my file, so I'm reshooting this video, and as I'm doing it right now, I could hear, what do you call it? I think a lawnmower outside. So I'm sorry if you hear it. I'm hoping you don't. It just started right now, and I'm like, I really don't have to reshoot this or do it later. The lighting is nice for once. There's been so much, I want to say kind of crummy weather, but I do like when it's overcast. But as far as recording, this is the perfect lighting. I don't know when I'm ever going to get this again. So yeah, sorry about that. Anyways, that's my non-spoiler chat about the book. I absolutely loved it. And I think you'll enjoy it too. It was a National Book Award finalist, which I didn't know, even though it clearly states on the front cover. So yeah, I'm gonna have a spoiler chat now. So if you haven't read the book, move along. I don't want to ruin this for you. All right, and on top of that, I actually made an effort to take notes. I'm loving this one. This is from A Clockwork Reader, Hannah, and she has a YouTube channel as well. And I love hers. I used a different version last year. It was like a bibliophile journal. And I didn't really like that one because it's just like one page for you to write all your notes. And I need way more space. It wasn't working for me. So I started using Clockwork Reader's journal. But here's the thing. I have way more room. But I had to like actually insert a page I cut out to make more notes. So hopefully this won't be so choppy. I'm gonna have to look down at sometimes at my notes just to kind of remind myself. All right, so I'm gonna talk about sugar babies, Sabrina and Corina, and maybe two more, but I don't want to talk about every single one. I just kind of want to talk about what short stories are emblematic of the themes that the author discusses throughout. So the first story is Sugar Babies. Sugar Babies is about Sierra. She's in, I think, elementary school, middle school, something like that. She gets an assignment from her teacher, and this is for the whole class. The kids are getting a C&H sugar. It's like that 1 or 2 pounder, and the assignment is to take care of the baby, right? And they're paired up with another student in class. While this is going on, Sierra's estranged mother pops back into her life. So there is this dialogue going on where Sierra's trying to parent this sugar baby assignment while also dealing with all the feelings that she has about her own mother coming into her life, or all the time that her mother wasn't in her life. And the story is exploring that. What I really love about the way that the author writes is, although there is a main character, there's always another character kind of opposing, not really opposing, not like an antagonist necessarily, or a villain or anything like that, but there's this other dynamic that's going on, and that happens with every single collection, every single story in the collection. And also there will be other characters, and I like how they play in the stories. They feel like fully fleshed out characters. For instance, there's this kid named Robbie who she's paired up with for the sugar baby assignment, and he's just a sweet kid. You could tell how much he cares. He wants to name the sugar baby after his grandmother. But with that, you see how much more is going on with Robbie. He's just dealing with a lot. And so I think both characters, Sierra and Robbie, both project their emotions, their feelings, what they're going on. I mean, what's going on in their lives onto this sugar baby. And that's when the personification comes into play, because you just see how the sugar baby will take on the emotion of how Sierra is feeling. For instance, like she's dealing with her mom and she's dealing with a lot of feelings, so she'll hug the sugar baby, and I think she like markered on a face onto the sugar baby, so like suddenly the sugar baby will look like sad. Robbie gives the sugar baby clothes. They're just all these things that they're trying to do to take care of the sugar baby, while this larger story is going on. And I thought it was really beautiful. And for being such a short story, the way that the author like sucks in the reader is, I don't know, it was just like so well crafted, and I think it's because the author makes the reader really care about the characters, and I really enjoyed that. The second story in the collection is Sabrina and Corina, which is a title of the book. And from the title of the book, we learn, actually, I think like the first or second paragraph, probably the first paragraph, we learn right away that Sabrina is dead. Sabrina's been murdered, and the character Corina finds out, but she's in no way surprised that her relative was murdered. And so this is another example of what the author does throughout the book, which is this pairing of characters, and they're very different. And they love each other, and there's like this dynamic going on. And so we see this story told as the present day is Sabrina has died. They're preparing for the funeral, and Corina is reflecting back in moments that she had with Sabrina. And it's those moments that the reader gets to see how sad Sabrina is. And I like that Corina will like describe moments, and this is where like the visual appeal, the imagery takes over, because I'll read it to you because I really love the way the author wrote it. So Corina says, at one point she convinced me to climb onto the bathroom pink countertop with her. She has us turn our bodies so we faced one another, our legs bent in the bowl of the sink. All around we were reflected in the 4 mirrors endlessly, like one tangled spider of a girl. And so I think that's saying a lot about them being kind of like mixed up together, growing up together. Something else that this story explores that I appreciated is identity. And this isn't the only story that does it, but I really love this story and how there's this complicated relationship Sabrina has with herself because of society. So if I remember correctly, I think her dad's white and her mother is not, and so she gets made fun of from a young age for not being enough. And at the same time, she's also praised for her beauty. But I think that both of those are problematic, right? Because society is telling her she's not enough, but they're also valuing her. And I don't think it's because of, how do I say this? I feel like it's because there's this reverence for the parts of Sabrina that appear more white than they do Mexican or indigenous Mexican. And so I think because there's so much value placed on her exterior and all this criticism for what she looks like on her exterior, I feel like the author is saying that's also what contributes to her not feeling valued or not valuing herself first, instead of trying to seek it out in others, because ultimately that's what Sabrina does. She looks to be valued through whether it's a relationship or drugs. She's just trying to seek for something that she's not gonna find. And that's just, it's really devastating. And so I think ultimately that's why Corina feels like she's not surprised by the time she gets a call that her family member has passed away, because like the character says at the very end, Corina goes on to talk about how people view what happened to Sabrina versus what Corina thinks really happened. So it says that people are going to say about Sabrina how men loved her too much, how little she loved herself, how in the end it killed her. But Corina thinks Sabrina didn't want any of this. She wanted to be valuable. And I really love that, but I also feel like, you know, having, I guess one's own self-worth, or like having self-esteem, that's nice. But sometimes when there's so much pressure on those things, that almost feels also like problematic. Like there's just so much pressure on this one thing. Like I have to be this one thing, and then once I get to be that thing, then I'll be happy. But you know, it doesn't really work that way. So I really love that story, and I feel like that's a great example of how there's all these different conversations going on within a story. And I also thought that was really beautiful. The third story in the collection is Sisters, and that one is as self-titled, about two sisters. And I really love that one because that's more about like society's pressures about women needing to be married. You have one sister that gets married, and you have one sister that doesn't want to be married, and what happens to those women, whether they follow the rules and when they don't. And so I don't know if I have the sisters' names, but I think it's Tina and Dottie. And Toddy, oh, not Toddy, Dottie doesn't want to be married. And make sure you look up trigger warnings before I talk about this, because there's like violence involved. But I won't really go too much into that. But ultimately, what's the character's name? Yeah. Tina's gonna get married, and when she talks to Dottie about this, it's not like Tina's getting married for love. She's making it very clear that she needs financial security, and this is a way to get it. And so that's what she wants for her sister. So it may be coming from a good place, but it seems like Dottie's feelings and what she wants isn't valued. And so there is like a man that pursues her, and she's trying to get out of a situation with this man. And so this violent act happens, but it's wrapped up in so much. It's like she's like struggling to get away from him, and so he just lets go of her, and then she I think she hits like the front of her face on like the car door, and I mean it causes damage to her. And so all the same moment when this is happening, this male figure is telling her the opposite. So there's a truth of what happened, and then there's a male figure that's basically treating her like, oh, I saved you. Because instead of like taking like responsibility for what he did to her. And when I was reading that, it felt kind of like, I don't know if me as a reader, if I'm like blowing this up too much, but it reminds me of a poetry collection I read by Jessica Salgado, and it's called Tesoro. And in one of those collections, I can't remember the name of the one poem, but Jessica writes about her body being colonized by men, and that's the first time I've ever read an author put what they went through in that perspective, that narrative. And I felt like what's going on with the character Dottie is something really similar, it almost seems like this is what literally happened to the character, but it's symbolic of colonization, right? And how I can only speak for the States because that's all I know. How it's like the United States was established, and then there's this fictional narrative that's been created, right, about what America did for America, but it's like a fake narrative. And so I feel like in that very isolated moment, that's what's happening to Dottie. And I found that like really profound and frustrating, and you know, it just elicited a lot of emotions, and I felt like that all comes down to the writing, and the author just did an incredible job. The fourth story is in the collection is called Remedies, and just really briefly I'll say that this is a story that's about a grandmother and a granddaughter dynamic, and I enjoyed that story because I actually felt like the author was touching upon something that I don't know if I would have got the message before. I could be wrong, but in November I read Fresh Banana Leaves, which talks about indigenous science, and oh my gosh, I forgot the author's name. Let me look it up. Jessica Hernandez, PhD. All right, so Jessica Hernandez, PhD, her nonfiction book about indigenous science, and also there's another book that's a fiction. It's The True Diaries of a Part-Time Indian, and I should know that author's name right offhand. It's Sherman Alexie, and both those books, Fresh Banana Leaves more than the other fictional book, talk about indigenous science and how it's been dismissed and just like not treated with the academic respect that it deserves. And I felt like that's what the short story Remedies is touching upon in a bit of a lighter way, unlike Fresh Banana Leaves where that's a whole book about that subject, right? But I appreciated the story that Remedies is telling, while also talking about what a person loses when their grandparents or a family member goes away. There's knowledge that's lost too, and I just felt like, I keep saying beautiful, but it was just a really touching way to write about that, and how it seems like the granddaughter character, when she does decide to use remedies that her grandmother taught her, I almost feel like when she's doing that, there's this, you know, like her thoughts are automatically going to go to her grandma, like it's going to be in memory of her. And this is what the grandmother had to pass down. And again, I thought that was beautiful. And I'll talk about one more because I don't want to make this super long. There's also the short story Any Further West, and it's the 9th story in the collection. That's about a mother-daughter dynamic. The father has abandoned the mother and daughter, and the mother decides that she wants them to start their lives over somewhere else. I think they go off to California. And what we realize over time, because I felt like the author wrote about it in a subtle way, or I don't know if it went over my head at the beginning, but I'm pretty sure the mom's a prostitute. And so when they go to start their lives over, her mom just finds herself falling into the old habit of relying on her profession and seeking the validation of a man, seeking someone to take care of her rather than trying to gather her own like financial independence. In the meantime, her daughter is just like trying her best to reach out to her in a way. She just wants to connect, and instead her mom just seems to put so much value and attention onto the male figure that's interested in her. That's kind of where it's at. And you kind of see like all the insecurities of the mother, but through the daughter's eyes. And it's really like sad and beautiful, mostly sad, because you just want more for the daughter. And also in this particular story, there's also conversation about what is home. Is home the place that you make it, or is home in your memories, you know, in the time capsule of your mind? Is it being raised by your grandma with your childhood there, and that's the only place that you want to be, you know? And so yeah, I really love that story. And I mean, the author wrote something really beautiful through the eyes of the daughter that I thought summed up a moment when the daughter felt like, I understand right at this very moment who my mom is and what I won't be able to do with her. Like, it's really beautiful. And so the daughter says, that's when I knew she was forever caught in her own undercurrent, bouncing from one deep swell to the next. She would never lift me out of the sea. She would never pause to fill her lungs with air. Soon the world would yank her chain of sadness against every shore, every rock, every glass-filled beach, leaving nothing but the broken hull of a drowned woman. I turned away from my mother then. I thought that was really beautiful. Also just like, not just what the character writes visually, symbolically, metaphorically, but that just the action of her turning away from her mother. It's like her realizing she can never go to her, and that she has to like stand on her own 2 feet. It's like sad and beautiful, and I really loved it. There's also another conversation that I really didn't talk about. I just realized I don't think any of the ones I brought up talk about this, and I don't want this to be super long, but there's also a conversation about gentrification. And what is the, I want to tell you which one. There's a couple. There's Tommy, and there's also which other one? I think it's Julian Plaza. Yeah, also talk about gentrification. And with that, there's another conversation about what is home, where is home. And I love that. And also how gentrification can destroy what you thought was once home. It was just really beautiful. I enjoyed every single collection, and I really enjoyed how cohesive the themes were throughout. And yeah, I'd say read it. I loved it. If there's a particular, how do I say it? If there's a particular story you liked more than the ones I discussed, please let me know. I'd love to hear what you think about it. The next one I'm going to read is her debut novel. I can't even think of the name right now. Woman of Light. That's what it is. The next book I'm reading is Woman of Light. I'm going to try to plow through that and get a video out within a week. And so yeah, let me know what you think about this, and I guess I'll talk to you later.